Now I want to go into more depth about wealth consciousness. I've mentioned it, I've given some exercises in the area of goals, but I want to kind of get a little more of a story about how I discovered this. Um, I started my journey looking inward at consciousness and what it means and how it's useful. I think actually, to be honest, my ex-wife, her family was from India. She was born in the U.S., but we visited with her relatives, and there they were all doing their spiritual practices, and several of them sat down with me and explained why they did it. It wasn't just for show. It was very practical. They explained how they were getting practical benefits, and eventually, I started studying with a Swami from India, so a spiritual teacher, and because the techniques he taught us really had benefit in my daily life, and that's what we really want. I mean, some people follow a spiritual path just because it's fun and they're interested, and that's cool too. But for me, I feel like I really needed. I wasn't getting the answers I needed from reading books or studying like how to do it. Like there's a lot of stuff you can see online, like people like how to get a girlfriend, which that wasn't my issue then. Uh, I was married, and I liked the person I was married to, but I had so many other problems. And but in that kind of like, well, how to get a girlfriend? Well, first say these words, and you have to like memorize some line. This is totally idiotic. You have to come from the space of success. And so, what is the space of success, or what I'm going to call, what I was taught, wealth consciousness? What is wealth consciousness? Well, there's something funny. So I'm kind of jumping to the end, and then I'll get back to how I got it. But everyone's looking at the world; they see the same set of facts, more or less, right? We're all living in the same world with the same fundamental reality, but with 8 billion people in the world, there's 8 billion different interpretations of that reality. And this is where the inner work is so powerful. It's how we interpret that reality. And so, wealth consciousness, people who have it, they see the same set of facts, but they see things, they see the pattern very differently, or they see opportunities. Or, like, sometimes I like to say, like, if you're looking, there's two major aspects. I mean, there's so much, but I'm going to isolate out two major aspects of consciousness. One is called victim consciousness, where somehow life is happening to you and you have no real choice in it. And the other is taking responsibility for your life. And I don't want to say this is easy, but when you look at the same set of facts from the different perspectives, one, I'm a victim, I can't do anything, and the other, I cause everything, suddenly those same facts start to reveal different answers. And I talk, I use a little analogy, like imagine you've got a hot cup of coffee in front of you, but from the angle you're looking at that cup, you don't see the handle. And it's like, well, I can't pick it up because it's too hot. And then you walk around the cup, and it's the same cup, but suddenly you see the handle. And now you can pick it up, even though it's hot, because you found the access point to your goal, which is to have a sip of coffee. Uh, you know, Trivial example, but the fundamental point exists for any goal that you might have. Can you change your viewpoint until you see the path, rather than trying to somehow either fix it or just give up? So how do we get there? How do we get to this wealth consciousness? Well, so I was telling you I was studying with this Swami, but it was all actually he would come to the United States, and I did some courses and they were amazing. But he said, I I can only do so much for you over a weekend, and you really need to come to India and and spend 3 weeks with me. And I wanted to do that so badly. I mean, literally for years, it took me. when did I first get the idea? That was like 2007. And it took me 7 years because I was just in my original finance business had pretty much failed. And, and I had a family and kids, and just every day was just like a struggle just to make money, just to have enough. And I didn't want to go out and, I'd been raising capital and then living off of the capital. And it was, I wouldn't call it a conflict of interest, but it was really bad planning. I didn't raise enough. I didn't know how to raise enough. And the way I teach now, I don't even teach raising capital as the first step. I teach getting financially solid as a leader, not with some, side hustle, but actually getting paid for your leadership directly. That's your job. And then as in your job as leader, then you go raise the capital. So that's what I'm teaching these days. And that's what I'm doing myself as well. That's why I'm not out there raising capital for myself, because I'm practicing what I teach. Everything I teach, I do myself, and it's working. Um, in fact, if you like that idea, you can visit my website and you can see my own mission. And if you want, you can support me as a leader by making a recurring donation to my leadership for as little as $1 a month in any currency you want. And I even designed the app that I'm using and that I share with my students so that they can really quickly raise their own nut in the Make My Nut program. All right, so but I didn't know any of that stuff in 2007, and kept on beating my head against the wall. And then, by 2012, my wife and I had separated, so I was living alone. I had moved to Park City, which is a good place to go if you're like trying to rebuild your life. And there's a lot of fun things to do. So my younger son was out visiting me for a month. And but then the Swami sent a video about wealth consciousness and the technique. And it's the basic technique I'm teaching you, which is you have a goal, but you listen to all the reasons your mind is telling you why you can't succeed. And then you need a technique to really get to see it's like, this is just my mind talking. It can't really predict the future. It's just trying to keep me safe. But all of these ideas that have been planted in my head are not relevant to my goal anymore. They're not really helpful. Like one thing, like when I first told my dad about my original finance company, he goes, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. Like if you have $1 billion, something bad is going to happen." Like that was sort of, he'd never expressed that before. You could see he lived his life from the point of view that money is scary. And so it's no wonder that I'm so interested in money, because we lived at the edge of a wealthy suburb. My relatives were all wealthy. Like everybody had money. And we were middle class. We were still, I would tell my mom, it's like, look, Mom, we're in the top 5% of wealth of the whole world. She didn't care. She was always nagging my dad, not making enough money. And he was from the Depression era. He was just so happy to have a paycheck. Like he didn't care at all about getting rich. It just wasn't even, he just wanted to be safe. He didn't care about vacations. He didn't care about anything except being safe. And that, of course, bugged all of us, because that was the old days. And all of our friends were having fun and, going off to Europe and, doing stuff. So, I grew up with a lot of, jealousy or confusion around money. I'm very happy with money these days. It's not, that anxiety, that whole thing. And, I can hang out with rich people. I can hang out with poor people. I'm just comfortable with my relationship to that energy field we call money. All right, but I wasn't, I still had a long way to go, and I really wanted to see this guy, and it cost a lot to get to India, and he made his courses really expensive. It was a spiritual process to get there, because 3 weeks, anybody who made it to the course had to overcome some kind of spiritual puzzle, because some people had the money, but they didn't have the time because their job, there's no way you're going to, leave your job for 3 weeks and come back. Or other people, so they had, either problems with time, with money, or relationships. Like there were a lot of people got there and they said their their wife or husband said if they went, they would divorce them on the spot. So if you got to one of those programs, you'd already solved the biggest spiritual problem. And then that made you very open to what this guy had to teach you, which was really, I learned a lot of amazing things about what it means to be a human being. In fact, he said, if you've been taught that you're a human being, you've been lied to. And what he meant is that most people have no idea how we're designed as human beings. And so when we talk about things like spirituality, to me, it's not just sitting and meditating. It's to begin to really discover what it means to be a human being and what our real capacities are, our capacity to create. And when we look out, we can look at any city and see skyscrapers or, art, or people have created things. And so if we're stifled or stymied in any area of creativity, including creating wealth, we're not really healthy. We're not expressing our true human, endowment, what we were born with. And so suddenly, my son was with me, and on his last day there, I get this email. So I'm in bed, he's asleep. The next day I had to take him to the airport. And I'm watching this video and go, oh my God, now he's giving me the instructions on how to get the money to go and pay for the course, which in 7 years of struggle, I just could not accumulate that much. It's about $10,000 I needed. And anyway, so again, the basic thing was write down the goal, listen to the negative reasons your mind is giving you why you can't have it. And then he had a technique, which I don't teach. We all hated it. It worked, but we hated it. But it worked. And I said, as soon as my son goes back home, my job is going to be just every day do this technique. Like, that is my homework. And I did that. And my goal was to succeed and have the money, within a month so I could go. And I could see it was working, but I failed. But the thing is, through that failure, I saw what to do next, like how to use that technique again. And one of the failures was I set the goal. The deadline to have the money was like, well, I need the money this is the deadline to buy the ticket and everything. And I realized it's like, that's too long a deadline, because if you fail, you don't have time to recover, which is why I really advocate very short deadlines for any goal you have, because you want to really press yourself to achieve that goal way faster than you can imagine, and make that burning thing. Anyway, the next month I kept going, and suddenly it all clicked. This was the crazy thing. It's like suddenly I saw, it's like, wow. People say money doesn't grow on trees. I could see the money all around me. It's like there was just money just like hanging within arm's reach, and that I could see my own resistance to just having it. It was such a wild experience. And suddenly I just said, it's like, okay, do you want to go or not? It's like, there's the money. Are you going to take it or not? And when I say take it, it's like there were all these people that wanted to give me money that I wasn't really, I was resisting just taking the simple steps it would take. I was doing some web development work, and a lot of people really liked my work. And it's just like, just do that. Like, just make your life around taking all this money that's hanging out there, people calling you, wanting you to do it. I would procrastinate. Like, in that work, I'd get the contract, and then I would just figure out a way to postpone as long as possible until it was like almost a crisis. I couldn't hide that I wasn't doing the work, and then I would crank it out, do an all-nighter. And once I saw that I was the person standing in the way of having the money I need to go, and I made that resolution to stop pushing the money away. And that's when I say the goal, if you state your goal, I allow myself to have, $1 billion of net worth. Why do we use the word allow? Because when you really look, you're the one getting in the way. You're not allowing it. Anyway, so then I saw that, and then I did it. And then I got there and I showed up. And, I thought I was going to roll in there with like hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash and, money bags. I just barely made it. I got enough to get there. I think I had a one-way ticket. And then I was there. And so we were doing the program. It was amazing. Just, I was learning so much about how I was getting in the way of myself and how to stop doing that. And that informs a lot of my mentoring. I've moved on to other teachers and other approaches after 9 years of that. I've done, I've been on that particular path for 25 years. And then he started talking about another program in Cambodia, which I really wanted to go. In fact, I wanted to procrastinate and save the money for that. But the burning desire to go and get my problem solved, it became really apparent that the first priority was to go to the first program. But again, while I'm there, he was talking about Cambodia. And I had promised my sons I would come back for Thanksgiving and visit them in Ohio, where they had moved to. So I was living in Utah, they were in Ohio. And then, so we finished the first program, and I thought, and then there was a yoga teacher training. I wanted to do that, and I didn't have the money, but I just used that wealth consciousness, and suddenly I had the money to stay another 3 weeks and do the yoga teacher training program. So I spent 2 months there in India, and then now it was Thanksgiving time, and the program in Cambodia was in December. And I thought, I just barely had enough money maybe for an airline ticket to get back. And, I was always doing the web development, so I could generally pay my bills, but it wasn't like I had, again, another pile of money. The program in Cambodia was even more expensive because instead of being at the ashram, we were going to be in, first class hotels in Cambodia, and all the food and everything was paid for. But I said to myself, that's poverty. So I was thinking, I'm going to tell my kids, I'm going to stay here in India and work and go to Cambodia. Then but he had taught, one of the things he said is that in a relationship, if you break your promises, you can break a few. He said, it's like a body. You can break a few bones and you can recover. But he said, every time you break a promise in a relationship, it's like breaking another bone. After a while, if you break too many promises, then the relationship's dead, basically. And I thought about that, and I thought about my desire to go to Cambodia and everything I'd learned over over 2 months in India. I said, okay, that's poverty consciousness. And literally his courses, it was like being a student of Steve Jobs, which that's another, I'll tell that story because I missed that opportunity to be, work with Steve Jobs. You could say, I can't say he would have hired me, but I saw the opportunity. I'll just say a quick aside, like when Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, I thought, these guys are insane. They just fired like the smartest human being on the planet. The board of directors fired him from Apple. And he had started this new company called Next to do what he wanted to do at Apple. And the headcount was like 8. And I had this thought, I was sitting on my couch, I was living in St. Louis. I said, get on a plane, go out there and just do anything to be part of that company. Like, I'll be a janitor. And that thought was really vivid, but I've been an environmentalist, and I wrongly thought, no, I'm going to stay long on the environment. I didn't realize you could hold more than one commitment. He didn't only start Next, he also started, Pixar Studios. Like, he became a billionaire a couple times over before he got hired back to Apple, doing it all at the same time. So, he was definitely on the beam, and I really missed out that because I made that decision to stay in St. Louis instead of hang out with, if I could have talked him into letting me on staff. And I think he was the kind of guy that would, he hired like school teachers to run manufacturing when Apple made computers in the US. He didn't care what your education was, only what your commitment and your drive was. I'm the same way. I'm naturally the same way. I don't care who I work with as long as they're passionate and committed to success. Not everyone is. That's the hard thing to distinguish. But, a group of ragtag people can achieve anything if they're committed. You have to be perfect education. Anyway, so back to this. So here I am. I'm in India, wanting to go to Cambodia, thinking I'll just sit, some cheap place in India or at the ashram, which is super cheap, work on the computer, save up my money, and again, saving versus acquiring the assets. And I thought that's all poverty consciousness. This is not right. So I booked a plane ticket. I didn't go back to Utah. I went straight to Ohio, and there I was. And I was hanging out with my kids and having a great time. And I felt so at peace because obviously there were tensions between me and my wife and her family. I never felt so at peace, and and I just felt like a different person. I was so able to navigate that situation, and so gracious and graceful. I'm still really not, but I'd never really been a gracious or graceful person. I just felt so graceful in this situation. And I remember one time my ex-wife, and she said something to me that was really very cutting. And all I said, isn't that a little harsh? Just that. I said, that seems a little harsh, I think is what I said. And suddenly she just stopped. Where in the past I would have gotten in some kind of, argument about it. But I was just coming from this whole different space. So anyway, I hung out with her family, my kids, and I had a lot of energy. And then, time for them to go to bed. I went back to the hotel, and I just wrote down, I just said, okay, I'm in Cambodia. How did it happen? And then these instructions just started pouring out of some intuition, some area of my consciousness. And there were so many ideas of how to get the money just pouring in. And then I would just rush and try to do as many of them as I could. And it was crazy. I have this little business selling wallets. You can check that out at urbanultralight.com. So they're the world's lightest wallets I invented. And it's a tough business. It works okay now. I prefer teaching people. I don't even work on the business because it makes money. It could be a much bigger business. I'm trying to overcome my resistance to just getting that done and selling the company. It's $1 billion opportunity right there, which I'm not even doing. Enough. Somebody's actually offered to buy the company already, but it's like, well, I don't want to sell it for $50,000 or $100,000 just yet. Anyway, you can see I love making videos, so I'm doing that. But I email all my customers and said, I said, I'm going to go over to Asia and come up with a better way to manufacture these things. And would you like to pre-order some wallets? So I made a bunch of money just pre-selling stuff I didn't even have. And then, I'd been doing the web development as well because the wallet business never really paid my bills. Because it's a very inventory, physical products are very cash intensive. You need to understand capital if you want to scale up a business that actually holds inventory. It's really tough. Anyway, and I had this one client, and what else did I do? I can't remember all of it, but that was a big one. And then I called this client of mine who'd been doing web development, and his name was Peter. And I said, hey, Peter, I want to get to India. I want to get to Cambodia. And would you be willing to pre-purchase some hours of labor from me? And he said, oh, Mark, I don't know. It's like, no, I don't think so. And so, okay, I'll let that go. And then what did he do? Well, so a couple days later, this loud thought just said, call him again. Just call him again. Like we were friends, like he was going to take my call no matter what. And so I called him. He said, hey, Mark, I'm really glad you called. I said, oh, really? Why? He said, well, my business partner is an alcoholic and we've got some money in the bank, but if I leave that money in the bank, he's just going to steal it and drink it. It's like, whoa. So I'm going to give it to you instead. He sent me $6,000. And I was just dancing because I wasn't there yet. I still needed more. I needed a few thousand more, but I was so close between the wallet pre-sales and the pre-sale of web development consulting. And I just knew that I was going to be in the program, even though I didn't know exactly how. And so I bought the ticket right away because, prices of tickets go up. And then I flew to visit my mom in St. Louis. And even there, while everyone else was sleeping, I was doing that same thing. I'm in Cambodia. How did it happen? And I just wrote down the story of how it happened. And, then I get on the plane, and I thought I had it all. I'd actually, more things had come in. I'd done some spot mentoring for a friend. He gave me $500. And I think another friend made a loan because I realized I could afford, like I would be able to be, a couple friends loaned me some money. I think I got about $2,000 worth of loans, and the whole nut was about 12,000. So I, arrived in the U.S. with basically no real savings, just normal cash flow, just my normal survival budget, but not enough to do anything like that. And then, so I'm on the plane. I didn't have enough money, but I'm on the plane to Korea, which was the layover, and then we're stopped for the layover to Cambodia, and I look at my bank account and it's like $2,000 short. I think $1,500 short. I go, what happened? I had the money. Now I'm $1,500 short. And I realized that the company I bought the ticket from, they gave me the ticket, but it took them like 3 days to clear my payment. So suddenly it's like, oh shoot, I'm like on the way there. I've got like 3 days to make up $1,500. So on that flight, on the next leg, I started sending emails to all my friends, asking them to help. I sent out like 300 emails. I think one friend donated $15, so that didn't work. Now you know how I really knew who my friends were by then. And but I just didn't stop. I just kept on doing the same thing. And then the guy who I'd given some mentoring to before, he did it again. He just, out of the generosity, he just gave me another 500 because what I taught him was, he could just see the value. It was worth obviously more than 500, and he just gave me 500 on the spot. And I'm not sure of everything else, but suddenly, there I was, and I literally took everything I had in the bank, whatever credit I had, which wasn't much, and I paid the rest of the bill for the course, and I was in. And it was the most ecstatic feeling to have accomplished that goal. And I literally had $15 between whatever credit cards and bank accounts, everything. I was down to $15, but I didn't have any expenses for the next 30 days or the next 3 weeks in the program. And so there I was. And then, a little money came in from Amazon with my wallet business, enough just so that when I got out of the course, I didn't have enough money to leave Cambodia. I had enough money to stay there because then, there were places you could like Airbnbs were like $15 a day, at least for a nice one. So I found a good place to stay, and I pulled out my computer and started hustling to get some clients so I could pay my bills. And because I didn't want to be homeless in Cambodia. And but anyway, that's wealth consciousness. That's how you get there. That how it takes action. And the thing is, I have to be honest. People say, "Well, Mark, if you know this, why are you so rich?" Well, first of all, I've had a lot of other challenges in my life. That, like, just making money wasn't really the solution to some of those challenges. I had a lot of things to work on. I'll do other videos, but the kind of losing the family and not being able to wake up with my sons every day, I felt so much shame around that, and how I had, what I had done to cause that, and just the whole thing. I mean, people talk about, I've seen some data saying that in divorces, men commit suicide more than women. And I'm too chicken to do that, but I could see why. I really suffered because I really loved being, I worked at home. I was with my kids all the time at home, even while I was working. In fact, we even worked in the same room. I mean, they were playing on their computers. I was doing my work. And then suddenly that had all stopped. And so I had that. And then, I've got another video on chronic illness that as I was recovering from all this, suddenly my body started doing stuff that I didn't, had never planned on. So that's occupied a lot. And these days, my work on wealth consciousness is a certain kind of ease. Like, even though it worked to get me there, I was still like just hustling all the time. And really with the wealth consciousness technique, the techniques I'm using now create a sense of ease. And I'm looking for more of a continuity. I'm applying many different principles now in my own life that I'm teaching. Again, I'll explain those in another video. This is a long one, it turns out. I didn't expect to talk this long, but here I am at 30 minutes. But I do have my wealth goals. And in fact, I have my personal wealth goal, which I may update, but my goal is to have $25 million of net worth. And from that goal and doing the things I'm teaching you, I started seeing the path to get there, and I've been following that path. But should I be more rushing that? I think saying this video, one reason I like mentoring people is because it brings up all of my own, fakeness. So as of this video, I'm going to rededicate myself to that goal. And I'll report back. We'll see how that happens. But I think that given what I'm teaching you, that I think a 2-year goal, I think I'll make it a 1 year. I think I'll just start with 1 year, because if I really focus on that for 1 year, if I fail, then there's another year. But I'm going to go with the intention. This video, if you've watched this far, you can pin this. What is it? The 23rd of October, 2024. So a year from now, let's see how far I am. Is my net worth 25 million? I'll let you know. All right. If you're this far in, thanks for listening. Put any questions you got in the comment section. Visit my website. And thanks a lot for listening along with me. This is really actually one of my most important videos. I think I've been a little shy to talk about these experiences because they're so out of the normal. When people talk, most people don't talk about what they really had to do to get successful. And this is what I did just to even be happy. Like, that was the first goal. It's like, can I just be happy? And that I have done. I'm rarely unhappy anymore. When I started out 25 years ago, I was just unhappy all the time. And I think I've got the best techniques. Like, if you just want to be happy, you should be working with me, because I can show you how to be happy in 30 minutes. And once you've got that knack, then being happy is just a choice. You want to do it. People talk about yoga. They say the hardest part of yoga is getting the mat. The hardest part about being happy is just doing it. Like, you can do it. You can be happy. Especially if you have a really good technique. If just me saying that may not click, but the techniques that I teach these days to my students, they work. And why be rich and unhappy? So I decided to work on being happy first. That's my excuse for not being, a billionaire today. But I'm going to drop, like I said, I'm dropping the excuses. 25 million by October 22nd, 2025. So there you go. And you can hold me to it. You can decide, am I real or fake? We'll find out in a year. All right. Take it easy.